Welcome everyone to our Packers News Packers Chat, virtually alongside Jim Owczarski. I am Olivia Reiner. We are back after we went live yesterday. We have more details to share with you after we heard from quarterback Aaron Rodgers and head coach Matt LaFleur for the first time since the draft. We heard from Matt LaFleur draft night. However, we have not heard from Aaron Rodgers and his reaction on the Packers' decision to draft quarterback Jordan Love in the first round until today. So we're going to get into some of his comments that we heard. Before we get into that, I want to remind you, you can be a part of our conversation. As always, head down into the Facebook comments or the YouTube comments, wherever you are. Leave us a thought you had, a question. Perhaps there was an interesting soundbite if you tuned in on the Packers website to the press conferences that you want to draw attention to, you want us to talk about. Perhaps we'll do so. We'll get to some of those toward the end of our conversation. Jim, let's just dive right into what Aaron Rodgers had to say about Jordan Love. He did say that his first initial reaction to Love's being drafted was that he was surprised. However, he understands why the organization did this, thinking about the long-term future of the quarterback's position. What was your biggest takeaway to what Aaron Rodgers said was his initial emotional reaction?
Yeah, my biggest takeaway was that he basically stayed with a thought and an emotional level, to me, Olivia, of something he said back in August of 2018. So that was when the Packers signed into a $176 million 4-year extension. And even in that conference call, Olivia, in 2018, he said, look, this really only guarantees me being here for 3 years, and Goody's going to do what's best for the team, and they did it to Favre, they could do it to me. So he said that 20 months ago, and here the Packers do it. And so I think he was surprised. He wasn't thrilled. But at least to me, Olivia, I mean, we weren't there with him draft night or in the immediate 48 hours. So after getting some time to digest it and then talk to us about it, he sounded like that same guy. Like, okay, they drafted a quarterback. I've lived it, and I probably won't finish my career with the Green Bay Packers. I think that was my biggest takeaway.
As you mentioned, he did acknowledge, kind of reading between the lines, that perhaps the Packers will not be his home for the rest of his NFL career. He did admit that, of course, he still wants to continue playing into his 40s, as he's mentioned in the past. How likely is it that Aaron Rodgers completes his career somewhere that is not Green Bay?
Yeah, I mean, it's likely because he says he wants to play into his 40s, plural. His contract ends when he is 40. Now, look, Tom Brady is the standard bearer for this, right, Olivia? He outlasted Jimmy Garoppolo and all the other draft picks that the Patriots brought in. But that's one guy. I don't know if you can just assume Aaron Rodgers is going to play at such a high level as he hits age 40, and Jordan Love, they have to make a decision. And look, Jordan Love have to win the job, you know what I mean, for the Packers to make that decision. But who's to say that in age 39 or 40 that year, the Packers are like, wow, you know what? Look, we traded Jordan Love 2 years ago, but we need to move on. Like, you know what I mean? So I don't know if it means Jordan Love will be the guy, but I do think it's, you know, the odds of Aaron Rodgers playing ages 41, 42, 43 in Green Bay. I mean, it's the only other person that have done that is Brady. So I don't know. I don't know if you could just say, like, yeah, that's what's going to happen. So I think the likelihood is that, yeah, he moves on at some point, like most players do in their 40s.
Only time will tell if Jordan Love will be the true successor to Aaron Rodgers at the quarterback position. In addition, only time will tell exactly what the relationship is like between Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love. We don't know what that's going to look like. It sounds like they've had some interactions already. We know that Aaron Rodgers called Love on the night that he was drafted. but we don't know exactly how it's going to play out on the field. What will you be looking forward to when the Packers do get back on the field, when hopefully there is some sort of media access? What will you be looking for in terms of an interaction or not non-interaction between Rodgers and Love as an indicator of what their relationship on the field is like?
Yeah, I think, Rodgers, I mean, having lived this, and, he came in famously making the joke to Brett Favre, like, "What's up, Grandpa?" And Favre didn't particularly care for it. And that relationship as players was not good. That relationship didn't mend until just a few years ago. And now Rodgers calls Favre one of his better friends. So I think, I don't know if that helps anyone just on a personal level. I don't know about the work thing, Olivia. So I think Rodgers is going to be a fine teammate. Like he mentioned, all the backups he still talks to, going back to Scott Tolzien and Brett Hundley and whatever. So I think that'll be fine. He says it's not Jordan Love's fault he was drafted, and so I don't think Rodgers is gonna be any kind of way with him that he wouldn't be with Tim Boyle, that he wouldn't be with DeShone Kizer. So I guess what I would be surprised is if there's some sort of like visible iciness, but I just don't. I don't think Rodgers would want to present that publicly, but more, I guess, deeper than that, I don't think he would just do that. He lived it, and I don't know how much it benefited him, in those first few years.
We'll see exactly how that relationship pans out as the Packers hopefully return to the field for either training camp. Who knows exactly what June will bring. What we do know a little bit more about, and somewhat breaking news now, is that the NFL has sent memos to owners and presidents of teams saying that clubs can start returning to their facilities on May 19th, not in a full capacity just yet. It's the very beginning of the return, as certain counties and certain states have eased their stay-at-home orders across the country. But it sounds like initially is that certain clubs will be able to allow players that need to get rehabilitation done to come back to the facility. It will allow up to 75 people, as long as that 75 is about 50% or so of personnel for the team, that works for the team. No coaches can enter the facility just yet, but that can only happen as long as they're complying with local guidelines. So in Brown County, for example, the safer at home order has the one that was announced on Wednesday night after the state Supreme Court essentially waived off the safer at home order that was across the entire state, and Brown County released its own one. That is no longer in play as of today. So in theory, the Packers, if they wanted to, they could start returning on May 19th, however, not at full capacity. And we did not get to discuss that exactly with the Packers or with Matt LaFleur today, as that came out right after he was done speaking. So that's just the way it goes. Jim, is anything that you're going to be looking forward to in terms of how the next few weeks, months pan out as far as teams returning to the facility goes?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can scratch the May on-field work. I mean, as you just kind of outlined there, Brown County is now, with their safer at home measure, lack thereof, the Packers can start to trickle in some guys. But look, the third week of May and the fourth week of May were OTAs last season for the Packers. Coaches are creatures of habit, so odds are those were going to be the weeks this year. So I think looking at June, the one OTA and then the mandatory mini camp, Matt LaFleur, you asked about this, he basically was just like, well, I can't really worry about that. We're going to roll with what we've got until told otherwise. So I think they'd love to be able to get them on the field in June just so they can get something done physically before camp. So we'll see. I'm curious to see if the Packers are a team that kind of pushes the envelope. That's the one thing we don't know. LaFleur mentioned that he thinks it would be a little bit of a competitive disadvantage if teams in other states are allowed to do things that others aren't. So I'm curious to see what kind of league partner the Packers are in that way. If Brown County comes out and says, hey, or if the state of Wisconsin says full go, kind of like Florida has, do the Packers go with that, or do they say, well, not everyone can do it? So I don't know. I'm really curious. That's, I guess, what I'm watching to see is do they want to push the envelope? Are they league partners with everyone else? That's I think that'll be the thing to watch, as we hit the end of May going into June.
Will they be the first to make a decision too? Who knows exactly how that's going to
turn out? I doubt that.
And what the team. You don't think they're going to be?
Yeah.
Not the trendsetters.
No,
the followers. Only time will tell. We'll see exactly how the Packers decide to reopen their facility once they are allowed to do that full go. Let's take a couple questions quickly from our lovely viewers. We'll start here with John with a thought. I want to make sure I'm getting this right here, John. He says, one thing that he does not see about Jordan Love's situation is him as a backup, saying that Aaron Rodgers does get hurt. What I'm interpreting this as, John, you're saying that you're not sure if Jordan Love is able to step into a backup role just yet if Aaron Rodgers does go down this upcoming season for any reason. Jim, we kind of discussed this yesterday, talking about how many quarterbacks are going to make the initial 53-man roster in 2020. Last year, it was just Aaron Rodgers and Tim Boyle. This year, Jim, you spoke a little bit about the case for the Packers keeping 3 quarterbacks on the roster in Aaron Rodgers, Tim Boyle, and Jordan Love. If this is the thinking here, if Jordan Love is not ready to be a backup in the NFL, perhaps it would make sense to keep Tim Boyle on the roster.
Yeah, the Matt LaFleur and the coaches, and some to a degree, even Rodgers, are equating this a little bit with the lockout in 2011. The difference is, and I talked to Andy Dalton about this because he was a rookie quarterback in 11 and led the Bengals to a playoff berth. The difference was he moved to Cincinnati and was running plays with A.J. Green and Mo Sanu and Marvin Jones, and he was running the offense. The offensive line was in front of him. They were doing these workouts. Jordan Palmer was the backup then, so Jordan had, they didn't have the playbook, but they had the plays, and they knew what was being done and what was – so they were working out together, throwing together, doing all these things in sort of the prep where they can't do that right now. So it's similar. You're just not getting the physical work. So to John's point, you're right. I don't think Jordan Love is going to be in a position to win a game in September, October if he's asked to. If Rodgers has like a couple game injury or gets knocked out of a game. Our colleague Tom Silverstein disagrees. He thinks that doesn't really matter. It's about the practice time. So I can see both sides of it. To John and to the other guys out there wondering if Love would be actually ready to help this team, bridge a gap and win some games if Rodgers gets hurt.
We'll see exactly what they decide to do, if they decide to keep 3 quarterbacks on the roster or if they decide to cut Tim Boyle and release him into the wild. We'll see. Thank you very much, John, for your point here. Let's move on to Nolan. Nolan wants to know, which second-year player do we see having a breakout season this upcoming season? It's interesting to listen to some of the things that Aaron Rodgers has said today, and then what Matt LaFleur has been saying since the draft, even at the Combine and on today's call as well. We've heard the name Equanimeous St. Brown a lot when discussing the wide receivers, and understandably, it's not his second year per se, but it will be his second NFL season, as he was on IR last season. So he's been a name that the coach, that Matt LaFleur seems to think is going to take a step. Aaron Rodgers acknowledged today that he thinks that a lot of those younger players from seasons past are going to have to take a step this season especially. Jim, how is the lack of on-field work in this offseason program going to impact the rookies and then, again, impact some of these second-year, perhaps even third-year players in terms of playing time and opportunities?
Yeah. So, quickly for Nolan, I mean, second year specifically, I don't know if he's thinking about Rashawn Gary or Jay Sternberg. Obviously, I think Elton Jenkins and Darnell Savage Jr. I mean, if they play better, they expect improvement, but they were pretty decent as first-year starting rookies. I don't know if Kingsley Kiki's going to work his way in and be a breakout kind of guy. So it's in terms of the question, it might be Sternberger or Gary. Obviously Sternberger because there's room. Jimmy Graham's gone. Josiah DeGuara is a rookie. So Sternberger seems like he's going to be the guy in position to catch passes and play quite a bit. Now, to what you're saying, in terms of this lack of work together, I do think it's going to affect them. Look, Aaron Rodgers is notoriously tough on his pass catchers. And again, our colleagues, Tom Silverstein, Pete Doherty, kind of get fed up with that narrative, but it's, it's true. So I do think, a guy like DeGuara, for instance, there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve, especially if Matt LaFleur is going to use him as a tight end H-back split. I mean, he's going to be trying to learn a bunch of different things that Jay Sternberger and Robert Tonyan kind of already have a bedrock for. So, it's going to, DeGuara especially, it might, limit, is that the right word, what he can do to a degree. So, I think Sternberger is the one that it sets up for just because he's had a year now in the system.
Seeing if DeGuara's skills in college can translate to the NFL level with the shortened offseason is certainly a question that I think I have. We'll see exactly how it all pans out for him. Last quick question here from Andrew. Andrew wants to know if the Packers are going to be making another move in free agency as the next several weeks and months go by as they try to start to whittle down that 90-man roster to a 53-man roster on either side of the ball. I think that there's a few questions that we'd have to answer. One, what is the cap situation exactly that would enable them to sign a player in free agency, or would it be more likely that they end up picking up someone off of waivers that gets cut closer to the start of training camp or even the start of the season?
Yeah, you're right. I think free agency in that true sense is kind of done. For them, they've got 90 guys. They're always looking for someone. So I guess if there is a surprise release of a player that Brian Gutekunst just has to have and he puts in a claim, sure. But Andrew, if you're talking about Clay Matthews, Mike Daniels, Tremont Williams, who seem to be favorite topics of Packers fans, or even Antonio Brown, or name Snacks Harrison, name any street free agent right now, I mean, they're not on a team for a reason. And I don't think those are guys who are going to be signed until teams get on the field and they get to camp and people start getting hurt and those type of things. I mean, that's just how this is going to go now. No, I don't really see it. And in terms of key player, those guys are also kind of hard to get in August. If they were going to be big contributors for a team, they're being signed in March.
Yes, the lack of on-field work right now and the fact that it is only May and that only so much time has passed is a factor in the fact that we'll see exactly if they make any more moves and who they end up picking up if they decide to do so. That is going to end our conversation for the day. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. If you have any more interest in what Aaron Rodgers said or Matt LaFleur said in today's press conference, there's a couple stories over on PackersNews.com that you can check out, read a little bit more about what they had to say. Thanks again, everyone. We'll see you next time. Have a good one.